Anywhere, but going quickly, I can tell you what it is. The Central Economic Development Agency Budget Committee is called to order with roll call.
Mayor Van Gordon.
Here.
Commissioner Lovell.
Here.
Councilor Weber.
Here.
Councilor Moe.
Here.
Councilor Rodley. Councilor Blackwell.
Here.
Councilor Doyle.
Here.
Councilor Missionary.
Here, thank you.
Colby Phillips. Here. Tina Patel. Jason Miller. Here. Devin Marche Duncan.
Here.
Darlene Reich.
Here.
Ruth Linos.
Here.
Arthur Iyer.
Here.
Paul Selby.
Here.
Mayor or Councilor, Chair, we've got a quorum.
Thank you. So as we begin our meeting tonight, I would like to ask members of the audience who are joining us online to please keep yourselves on mute until you are called to provide public testimony. There's one time this evening designated for public testimony and will be listed as business from the audience on the agenda. If you're attending in person, please complete the request to speak card located at the entrance of the library meeting room and give them to the budget officer. If you're joining us online with a tablet, smartphone, or computer and wish to speak during that time, please use the raise hand option to be called upon to provide comment when the designated time is announced. The order of public testimony is as follows. First would be anyone who is in person at City Hall. Second is anyone who has raised their virtual hand. Third is anyone who has submitted email in advance. And fourth is anyone who has submitted written comment via email in advance. Next order of business. The election of officers, election of chairperson and vice chairperson. I would like to open up the floor for nominating for the position of chair.
I just want to ask a question.
Yes.
Weren't you just elected for that position?
This is a budget chair.
Oh, okay, never mind.
But yes, I'm chair of the seated. Okay, but this is for the budget. So, nominations.
I nominate Paul Selby. Okay.
I have any other nomination? Hearing another, no, yes.
I was gonna nominate Councilor Victoria Doyle. I don't think we can be, can we?
I don't think we can be as counselors.
Okay, then.
I just learned that.
Can be,
Can be.
technically, but we've just, our past practice has typically been.
Avoided that, so we don't have
Policy.
Thank you, though.
past practice. But, so you're gonna withdraw all that?
I will withdraw that.
So we have a motion which has been seconded on the floor to elect Paul Selby as chair of this budget committee. All those in favor signify by an aye.
Aye.
Any opposed signify same. Nomination is unanimous. So then we go on to the. Oh, we could have gone on to vice chair, right?
Yes, but you passed the gavel and then.
Oh, but he gets it.
Where did you leave off?
I can tell you. Okay. Do a vice.
today.
All right, I would now like to call for nominations for a vice chair.
Victoria Doyle.
I am popular tonight. Jason, are you interested?
You're going.
Sure.
Thank you, though.
I withdraw that.
I nominate Jason Miller.
Are there any other nominations? I have a nomination and a second. Barring any other nominations, we'll hold a vote here. All in favor of Jason Miller as vice chair? Signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed with nay? Congratulations. All right, I would now like to turn things over to Nathan Bell for opening comments.
All right, thank you, Chair Selby. Welcome, everyone. I'm Nathan Bell, I'm the city's finance director. Tonight's SEDA budget committee is very similar to the city's process, with the exception it's just consolidated or compacted into a single evening, 60 minutes. We're still going to have a budget message. There's going to be questions and deliberations. And then I'll bring up an errata, and then there'll be an opportunity for proposing adjustments. And at the end of your packet, there will be two motions for us to put this forward to the SEDA board for adoption on June 12th. One thing you'll notice is we have 4 additional members for this committee, so we're a little more packed around the table. This committee includes the mayor as a formal member of the committee. We have commissioner level and then 2 more community members. We have Colby Phillips for downtown district, I believe, and we have Tina, who is not here this evening. Okay, who represents the Glenwood district. I don't have much to say here this evening. Again, we'd like to treat this like a conversation. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask them as we go through the presentation. I did check in with you first, but I'm feeling that's okay. With that, I'm going to move it over to our economic development manager for the budget message.
Okay. I'll make sure my clicker works. Hi, everyone. Allie Camp. As Nathan said, I'm the new economic development manager. I know some of you, and I'm new to some of you, so thanks for having me here tonight. At the table with me is Sam Kelly. Sam's going to be participating in a couple of slides in our presentation. Sam is our legislative and ECDEV analyst. And then out there in the audience is Vahana Horn. Vahana is our ECDEV analyst too. If you've been downtown, you've probably seen her. Do I have to do something special?
Maybe not.
Oh, it's gonna be good, but
Is it on?
okay.
Yeah, so you can-
That's what I'm here for.
Okay.
Isn't that pillar right there?
Here we go. Great start. Okay, so everyone's favorite graph, the way we start our presentation, the Springfield Economic Development Agency exists because of urban renewal and tax increment financing. Generally speaking, tax increment financing functions by creating a frozen base, the light gray section at the bottom, after a plan is adopted, and any increment earned after that frozen base becomes tax increment dollars to invest as the plan prescribes in the urban renewal area. Until the plan expires. In our case, we have 2 urban renewal plans that don't have specific dates of expiration. Those expirations are based on the maximum indebtedness and when we reach that. A few things I like to remind folks about urban renewal or tax increment financing. It is not a new tax on your tax bill. It is a reallocation of the existing tax base. And one of the most important ingredients of urban renewal is time. Time is the measure across the bottom of the graph. It also requires voter approval. So thank you all for the taxpayer votes to approve tools like this in our community. And thank you to the overlapping taxing districts for being participants of this. So speaking of the 2 urban renewal plans, I just love this picture of the bridge. We have 2 in our community. We have our downtown district and our Glenwood district. They're outlined here on the map for you. Urban renewal districts are defined as blighted or economically distressed areas, and they're designated to receive these injections of tax increment investments for improvement over time. I mentioned on the last slide, our urban renewal districts are, well, I didn't mention this, but they're kind of in their teenage years in terms of maturity. They've been around a little bit, they've gained a little bit of experience tax increment, and they've got a lot of maturing to do to reach their full functionality. We assist in that maturing by finding opportunities for investments. On the screen, you'll see just over 10% of Springfield's geographic area across Ward 2 and 3 dedicated to urban renewal. For the Glenwood boundary, it stretches from the river to I-5, and for the downtown boundary, it stretches from roughly Island Park to 23rd-ish. We have specifics coming on each in the future, and I'm going to hand the next couple slides over to Sam.
Perfect. I just wanted to start with maybe a high level look at the values of the 2 areas. So on both these graphs, that lower bar, the blue on the Glenwood side and the kind of the orange red on downtown, that's that frozen base Ali was talking about. That shows that stable amount over time. And then the higher levels, the red and the green, show that increment, how it's growing, how the property values are changing. We did want to point out that in this example, both of these graphs are going to the same value, 300 million. I believe in your packet, Glenwood stops at 250 million. So we want to kind of highlight this and call them out on the same level, what they're looking like. Generally speaking, they're both going upwards. Great, doing a great job. That's what we want to see. There are some dips and valleys in there as buildings are torn down. I believe historically we've had some fires in some spaces. You see a little bit of drop, but generally speaking, increasing over time. Now, this could just be typical inflation. So we did take a look at that. About 3.9% is the growth over the past 10 years of all the city buildings. On average, these 2 combined districts are seeing more like 12.3%. So if you feel confident the investment is working, increments growing, then these plans are working out nicely. Within those 2 zones, there are some taxpayers we wanted to call out. Glenwood, the big 3 property owners, Fran's Bakery, Far West Deal, and Ridgeline, which is also known as Atcor. And then downtown, the Swanson Group, Borden Chemical, and then Lumen Tech. I did want to highlight, and it seems maybe obvious, this nice little growth in downtown right here. This is not on the trend. It's quite a high growth. Swanson's Group is the primary cause of this. They had some buildings come off enterprise zone, and we'll kind of dig into that in a little bit later slide here. Looking closely at Glenwood, we can see the frozen base of 106 million. This last fiscal year, oh, thanks, Neil, 23, 1.3 million. That was our increment, the revenue we saw coming into Glenwood. We're estimating about 1.48 for next fiscal year. And currently that indebtedness, that sunsetting date, 12.4 million. And that is about 38% of the total indebtedness for Glenwood spent to date so far. On that top graph, you can see where our value right now, we're at 221 million. Again, that's a total value of all the properties in the area. That's how Glenwood's looking to date. I will pass it back over to Ellie. Stop with some more tax.
Thanks, Sam. So we're going to get into some of the specifics about Glenwood. These are some overviews of the characteristics of the area. It's 417 acres. In 2004, the voters approved this urban renewal area, and in 2005, the frozen base was established that Sam just mentioned. It's a mixture of industrial, commercial, residential, and open space land. And as Sam mentioned, our maximum indebtedness is 32.8 million, which we're roughly at 38% of using that. The goals for the area are to grow industry and employment, increase and improve housing stock, and create community access to the river and open space. We have some redevelopment tools that we achieve this increase in tax increment with. We have a systems development charge program, which is an opportunity for SEDA to cover the SDC fees within the city's jurisdiction. Those fees are transportation, local wastewater, and stormwater. We utilize land assembly and redevelopment to spur investment in the area too. This is mostly seen in the Glenwood master plan area. Our initial investments in this area will hopefully spur future investment in Glenwood, which allows us to accrue that property tax increment. Infrastructure investments have occurred in Glenwood too, and we use those to have land be more developable over time. We'll touch base on that in a little bit. And we work closely with the Franklin Boulevard team for a lot of those infrastructure investments that you see on the right of way. And then finally, we have two redevelopment tools, both zones, enterprise zone and opportunity zone. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the enterprise zone here, and then in downtown, I'll touch on the opportunity zone. The enterprise zone is a state-run program. And it incentivizes new business investments, things like equipment, expansions, new construction, by abating local property tax for a certain amount of years. That can either happen in a 3-year time span or a special approved 5-year time span. We have a couple of notable enterprise zone applicants in the Glenwood area, Fran's Bakery and Atcor, both of which Sam mentioned. So whenever those folks make big investments in our area that qualify for enterprise zone waivers, we like to keep an eye on those because those are our high property taxpayers over time. Fran's will have value added starting in the 25-26 tax year from their most recent investment. And then Atcor, we saw the first investment hit the tax rolls in 2017-18, and then the third investment was taxable in 19 and 20. So these little things are coming back into the district over time. Okay. Couple of notable projects responsible for the increment growth in the Glenwood area, or ways that we've used tax increment. In the top left, you will see the 3 hotels at the westernmost side of Glenwood. SEDA purchased the properties and negotiated the additional partnership with the Patel family. From west to east, we have the Fairfield Inn that was built in 2017. We have the Candlewood Suites built in 2014, and then True by Hilton built in 2019. Those hotels received SEDA's SDC support to make them viable developments. In the bottom left, you'll see the entryway signage. Oh, I have the, there we go. In the bottom left, you'll see the entryway signage to Glenwood. That's also at the western edge of Glenwood. That was installed in 2022 up for the Oregon World Athletic Championships in July to welcome folks into Springfield. We also have achieved land assembly and potential future redevelopment up here in the top left. This is a picture from across the river. where you can see the Glenwood master plan area a little bit more clearly. That is the roughly 30 acres of land that the city is partnering with some private landowners and SEDA and city-owned land for future redevelopment opportunities. Just a reminder, a while ago, we brought on developers Jill Sherman and Mark Mixis to serve as the development representatives for this area. And then finally, in the bottom right, we have the Wildish site, which is prepped for development, and the addition of the Warehouser facility opened in 2022. This Warehouser facility is a really good demonstration of the office zone that's in the Glenwood area. This is their headquarters, and as I mentioned, they opened in 2022. The Wildish site is moving through the final stages of fill permitting. This is a 44-acre site, and it's a valuable part of our commercial and industrial buildable lands inventory in terms of what we have available for future employers, headquarters, office space, light industrial. I'm gonna hand it back to Sam.
Shifting gears, we'll look at this graph again for the downtown district. So 124 million was that frozen base, that red bar on the bottom. 1.5 million is what we're seeing in 23. We're estimating 1.86 in 24. With the indebtedness to date, 7 million, that's roughly 17%. So again, this nice sharp jump from 21-22 to 22-23, Swanson's Mill, as Ali explained, enterprise zone coming off there. Again, this is the benefit of the time with urban renewal districts. We can agree to waive this revenue for a few years, let them invest in themselves, build some capital, and then wait for them to see a nice sharp growth to our increments. Part of this, of course, we have to mention inflation. We have seen inflation growing this year. And this is one of the few times where materials and equipment devaluation didn't surpass inflation. So inflation was higher than materials devaluing. So again, part of that growth, we can't take all the credit for it. We have some inflation to thank for that as well. And with that, we'll kick it over to Ali to go into some more details.
These are some of the characteristics of our downtown urban renewal district at 618 acres large. In 2017, the voters approved the establishment of the district, and in 2008, the frozen base was established. It's a blend of mixed-use commercial and residential land. And it has an authorized maximum indebtedness of 43 million, and Sam mentioned that we're roughly 17% into that. The goals of downtown are revitalization, to promote public and private improvements, to rehabilitate our building stock, to improve and expanding housing options, and to make utility improvements. We have redevelopment tools in the downtown core that can help us with this too. As I mentioned earlier, our systems development charges for the local wastewater, stormwater, and transportation that SEDA assists in covering to make projects pencilable. We've made infrastructure investments in the downtown core to the tune of decorative lighting and catenary lighting. In terms of land acquisition, SEDA owns a few properties in the downtown district, 138 Main, 236 Main, which is the home of Vino and Bango, and the Memorial Building. We hold on to these assets for potential use in the future for redevelopment opportunities. Business expansion, retention, and recruitment with our marketing program, Discover Downtown. We've made some art investments in the downtown core too, to make sure that people feel warm, welcomed, want to invest in the area. And then as I mentioned, our Discover Downtown marketing program, which focuses on promotion of and collaboration with and for businesses. This is my plug to follow us on Facebook.
What's your plug to what?
Follow us on Facebook.
Oh.
I mentioned a little bit more about the enterprise zone when I talked about Glenwood, and I'm just going to touch on the opportunity zone a little bit. The opportunity zone covers the census tract, which incorporates a portion of the downtown urban renewal district. This is a federal program that is kind of census tracts must meet certain demographics to qualify. And what it does, it's an investment from private sources to projects so they can receive a capital gains tax benefit or deferment. We don't have a ton of role in this as a local government, just to make folks know that it's a tool out there, but it does help to spur redevelopment in areas that we're also focusing on redevelopment with. Two notable enterprise zone applications in the downtown urban renewal district: advanced elastomers technologies. They make very cool rail car amenities that can kind of support the tension between cars over time. And then Swanson Mill, as Sam mentioned. Okay. And in the past in downtown, we've had some success in the past with downtown's increment growth over time. Here are a couple of the items I'd just like to call out for you. In 2020, we purchased the Vino and Vango building, and we've been leasing it to that business since. Also in 2020, we purchased the Memorial Building for future redevelopment opportunity. Right now, that building is leased to the developer of the Blue Mackenzie site, so that they can have a little bit of site support whenever the building moves to construction. And then in 2022, we also sold this building right over here, Queen Bee Tattoos, so folks can continue their business in there. And then this building right down here at the corner is a watercraft sports facility. They received the SDC exemptions and help businesses open in downtown too. Okay. So we're going to move on to the fiscal year 23 accomplishments. The bullet point on the slide reads that progress on the land assembly of the roughly 13 acres of the Glenwood Master Plan area. This has been an effort since 2016 to assemble these roughly 13 acres of SEDA and city-owned property on the area you see on the screen right here. The green items are the SEDA or city-owned land responsible for that future redevelopment area, the master plan area, we call it. And again, this is a project that we have private partners with. Homes for Good is involved. This has been a long haul in terms of this property acquisition, and we are moving towards the final negotiations on the last piece of property. We have hired a master planning team, and we've begun the Glenwood master planning for this master planning area. In the Glenwood area, how many times can I say master planning in this presentation? The firm that we hired was Rao Brokaw and Walker Macy, and they were selected through an RFP solicitation. We've had 5 eligible firms apply. We interviewed 3 of them, and they were selected to attend a formal interview process. They received the highest score out of the bunch. They've been working since February on the project. That master planning process is expected to take about 17 months to complete. And at the end of it, we will have a per lot design and an understanding of what can be built, where roads will go, how we serve utilities to certain sites. Another major achievement in fiscal year 23 is project milestones for the Blue Mackenzie project. The Blue Mackenzie project has reached major project milestones in fiscal year 23. They've completed 100% of its pre-development loan, which was funded by SEDA. These pre-development efforts stretch from property acquisition to having a building plan set ready for review. The project has also moved through the public improvement permit review and the land use process in terms of the final site plan review. Blue Mackenzie continues to be a market first for our community. And just a reminder, it's 84 units of market rate housing in our downtown core, right next to the post office. And it's proposed to be cross-laminated timber construction. And then finally, another achievement, which feels small, but also very mighty. We have increased our public information for the community in terms of publishing information on our website about these exciting projects and having SEDA meeting minutes available for the public. This is exciting work. People want to know about it, and transparency is important. Easy access to information is important for this level of change in our community. Fiscal year 24 initiatives include Blue Mackenzie construction. As I mentioned earlier, this project is currently under permit review to move to construction. In the past year, we've accomplished a lot in terms of coordination with utilities, understanding how the project will impact our downtown core, and having sites set up in terms of the Memorial Building and the Carter Building lot for staging. The building permit review is one of the final steps, in addition to finalizing the last pieces of financing before we move to construction. Another initiative is the Glenwood Riverfront Land Management and Planning. For properties currently under contract in the Glenwood Master Plan area, they will need to be kept safe and secure as the master planning work proceeds. Again, this is kind of a 17-month process that we're expecting with the master planning team. Major project milestones are expected in fiscal year 24 in terms of understanding how that site will be able to be built out over time. That master planning work is a land use regulation process that can take time, and we're anticipating to be the majority of the way through at this time next year. Interest in SEDA's work has grown since moving into these larger scale projects. In fiscal year 23, we established a process to gather minutes from SEDA, and we will continue that process in fiscal year 24 after receiving positive feedback. The SEDA logo will also be reimagined to better reflect the board's vision and build stronger recognition for its redevelopment investment. So if you've never seen the SEDA logo before, it's right here. And then finally, the last item that I want to highlight is downtown connections. We continue to be very present in downtown to provide marketing and business support. Folks know they're in downtown. They know it's a special place whenever they're there. Bahana is largely responsible for that marketing effort. And she is planning meetups and to be the primary source of information as these large changes move through our community. Okay. In terms of 3-year considerations, the biggest one I think to speak about is the Glenwood redevelopment vision implementation. The master planning work, as I've mentioned a number of times, will establish a buildable future for the 30 acres of land in Glenwood that we're planning for. And this buildable future comes with a lot of logistics in terms of what happens, when, and how. The city, SEDA, private partners, and our agency partners will be in close coordination over the next couple of years to realize the vision that will be held in this plan. In terms of downtown private property redevelopment opportunities, the Blue Mackenzie, we are hoping, starts a wave of investment in our downtown for housing and higher density development. Potential future project investments are anticipated to solidify and multiply once Blue Mackenzie comes online. Property and project owners have already expressed interest in making substantial investments downtown to develop this mix of commercial, housing, and hospitality. And these projects are anticipated to use the SDC payment program that SEDA offers. Serving employment land along Franklin McVeigh Boulevard. That Wildish property is a priority industrial development site along the McVeigh Highway corridor, and it remains a focus of recruitment with an emphasis on large employers. Headquarter opportunities and supporting existing businesses that follow that corridor, like Warehouser and Innovative Air Solutions. Substantial infrastructure needs are anticipated with design work beginning along the Franklin McVeigh Boulevard corridor. And then last two, downtown electricity capacity investments. The Springfield Utility Board will be proceeding with a voltage upgrade project throughout the downtown in the coming years. This project will bring much needed service capacity enhancements to current and future businesses and will increase the opportunity for redevelopment in the downtown core. And then finally, property management and redevelopment. SEDA-owned properties in downtown and Glenwood are required to be future development assets should the board decide to do so. As opportunities arise, we can discuss whether these buildings and sites serve their highest purpose being tenant use or can transition into future development opportunities. Okay. Take a deep breath. Did all my animations go? This is one of my favorite photos of Glenwood, and it's my thank you slide. It's the ending slide. I just love that it demonstrates this different view of our community. You get to see the bus station, you get to see a little peek of Springfield, and that bridge that connects our urban renewal districts together. I think it's kind of symbolic, and you get all of that in this photo. So thank you. We are all available for questions should they come up.
Any questions?
Thank you, Chair. I just have one for you, Ally. I'm curious, with all these urban renewal dollars, how much leverage has SEDA put upon the Blue Mackenzie project in light of if that project does get delayed for some reason, the money we've committed to that project, is there other development opportunities that need gap filling that we can also service?
Yes. In November, the SEDA board approved that $10 million construction loan for the project, and I believe that is our leverage point at this time, 10 million. The $2 million of pre-development loan is part of that 10. That leaves us a lot of wiggle room in our SEDA budget with our maximum indebtedness being 44 million, and I think we're only about 17% into that, so we have a great deal of
We got
leverage.
about $30 million, give or take, that
Mhm.
some other investors can come in and we can aid. Yeah, good.
These
Super.
opportunity developments.
So, thank you.
Mhm.
Any other questions from the room? Do we have any online?
Oh, I'm sorry, for public input.
Yeah.
We have one individual, Chris McAllister, who is here in the room and available to provide comment. Okay. So I think we'll have you come in and clean up around one. I'll pull up the time.
Mr. Chair, members of the Budget Committee for SEDA, my name is Chris McAllister and I live in Ward 3 on 12th Street. As a provider in the community for unhoused services and as a lifelong and born Springfield resident, born McKinsey-Willamette, Ward 3, I do most of my work in Wards 2 and in Wards 4, where our homeless populations and a lot of our businesses tend to be. Most of my calls tend to be from businesses and social advocates trying to wonder, where do we go from here? A few years ago, 2020, right after you purchased the memorial building, we were able to utilize it for the first time ever in a large scale shelter that helps serve our community. At approximately $150,000 for 3 months, we were able to actually present outcomes by housing over 12 people at approximately $17,000 a piece of what it would cost the county to currently do it under its all-in proposal. So by utilizing and leveraging our properties free of rent to the county, we allow our peoples to have a safe place for opportunity and to invest in the forward steps of our community. While serving Springfield, we have found that a majority of our folks are rooted in the Glenwood space because it's currently not as enforced as our local city. And as such, we would like to be able to ask for allocations to be able to help make Glenwood presentable and preservable, not only for the people who live there, but for the people to come. And so by investing in our properties, leveraging our properties and asking for allocations from the county or offering some of our own stakes, assessed properties, things that we have done, we have the opportunity to engage and bring in a new wave of economic development, not just from the top with the developers, but from the ground up, and let some of our economic refugees, some of those who've been displaced since 1996 when we closed down a lot of our logging, some of who've been displaced in the early 2000s when we lost Symantec and Sony. As a kid who grew up in this area and who was able to get off the streets because of programming in public buildings that was not charged to the landlords, but was those dollars were turned into development and re-engagement program, I was able to get off the streets. And so I not only got off the streets, but I've been off the streets for 16 years. For every one of me, there are 5 people who have not been given a chance. There are 6 wards in this town, and we need to make sure that we represent all of them. And so whether it's Glenwood revitalization or the downtown, those are the 2 areas where our people, our unhoused, tend to be displaced too. So if we want developers to come in, we need to work with that. And I would also like to ask that we put teeth on our LRPs. If we're going to do low income tax exemptions, we need to make sure that if they aren't going to operate those years, that it comes at a penalty to those people. Because you can choose to not opt in and then you don't have to deal with it. And so you can go market rate and then you can go back to low income. You can go market rate, go back to low income. It's just you don't get your break. When do our community get a break? When do we have more actual teeth? Springfield does not acknowledge its unhoused populations by passing it to the county to deal with. How do we as a committee for economic development re-engage our displaced workers, our displaced citizens, and get them back to work? We have mills, we are retooling with CLT. We have the ability to bring the next generation and set a Springfield standard. I'm proud to be a Springfielder. I'm proud to be among you. And as someone who oversees a budget process myself, thank you for your hard work and your commitment.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
We don't have any other comment, but I do want to note for the record that Councillor Rodley's joined us online.
So without any further comments or questions about the budget, I believe we move into deliberations now.
Yes.
Okay. So we can begin the deliberations on the budget.
And let's start this process, actually bringing up the errata. So typically when we bring up errata, a lot of times it's a blank worksheet. In the case of this year, for both SEDA and for the city, we're going to have some pre-populated adjustments on there. These are items that came to our attention after we put the budget together, or because it's prior to adoption by Oregon budget law, we're required to include those as part of our budget adoption. These are items that if we had been aware of them at the time that we put the budget together, they would have been included. And in this particular case, this relates to our downtown parking program. The parking program was never meant to stay in the downtown operating fund, its whole life. The goal was to get it to a point where it could sustain itself and then move it to another location for long-term operations. And we actually, the program was close to sustaining itself prior to COVID. However, this is one of the programs at the city that was hit hard by the pandemic and hasn't yet recovered. So this sort of, at this point, I think we're a number of years into this program and recognize that it needed to be moved out because you can't use your urban renewal districts for long-term operating expenditures. Because this program was impacted by the pandemic and did not recover, we've identified ARPA funding as being a good source of funding for this program. This will allow us to operate it for the next 2 years while we reassess this program and determine where its long-term placement will be in the city fund and what type of revenue support will bridge that gap in revenues and expenditures. So what we're doing in this errata is we're removing this program from downtown, the downtown fund. And then when we get to the city budget later on, you're going to see us bringing it into our special revenue fund. And so what I'm looking for tonight is I'm looking for a motion just to accept it onto the errata. Once we've done that, then I'll open it up to Chair Selby for any other proposed adjustments that you want to make to this budget. Recognize as committee members, any one of you can propose an adjustment. It needs a second to go to a vote. And because our committee is made up of 16 members, it will need 9 positive votes to make it onto the errata. At the end of the evening, there are 2 motions at the back of the book for us to move this budget forward to the SEDA board on June 12th for adoption. One of those motions will be essentially asking to approve the budget as proposed by the city manager at a specific dollar amount with the adjustments as recited by staff. And at that point, I'll recite whatever adjustments are being made to this budget. So for this program, what we're doing here is we're decreasing the operating expenditure for the program in the downtown fund. We're decreasing the parking program permit revenue in the same fund, decreasing the parking program fine revenue in the same fund. And then because it had a gap in its funding, this results in an increase actually to the SEDA downtown fund reserves. And I didn't mention amounts, but 131,000 decrease in expenditure, 32,000 decrease in revenue, 25,000 decrease in revenue, and a $74,000 increase in reserves. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to you, Chair Selby, for a motion to accept it onto the errata.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the SEDA budget errata worksheet as presented for the SEDA budget.
I'll second it.
All right, all in favor of approving the errata as presented? Aye. Sorry, opposed, nay? All right, let it show that the motion passed. And now, is that it?
Just open up to any other adjustments.
Is there any other adjustments?
Or motions? All right, motion.
Yeah. Well, let's see if there's anyone wants to make. If not, then open it up to motions.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the budget as proposed by the city manager in the amount of $9,137,071 with the changes accepted with the errata. Is that correct?
Yes, and I'm going to just read just to make sure we got it in
I
record.
can read it in, no problem.
Yeah, go ahead.
So item A in the errata would be decreased parking program expenditure. Do I need to do the
By amount. Yeah. You have to do the whole string, not just the amount.
okay.
Operating expenditure.
Operating expenditure of $131,000. Also, item B, decreased parking program permit revenue by $32,000. Item C, decreased parking permit fine revenue by $25,000. And item D, increase the SEDA downtown fund reserves by $74,000.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the motion passes.
I need a second motion on this one. I'd like to make, please. Recommend that the Springfield Urban Renewal Agency Board of Directors request that the county assessor provide the maximum amount of revenue for the urban renewal plan areas that may be raised by dividing the taxes under section 1C, article 9 of the Oregon Constitution and ORS chapter 457.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Got it. Okay.
Nice job.
And then we'll take a 10-minute break and then reconvene as the city budget committee.
Adjourn for 10 minutes.